What was I gonna say? Oh, yeah. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Very Reasonable Pilots Podcast. I'm your host, Charles. Along with me, as always, is my co-host, editor, producer, podcast co-pilot, Jacob Gloff. How you doing?
I said co-pilot.
This
is what I've always wanted to be.
Yeah, you're my co-pilot.
So excited. Well,
you're my Chewie.
I'm your Chewie.
You're so my Chewie.
I guess I get to live longer, so that's cool.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm cool with it. I'm okay with getting stabbed by my son. Also, I was reading our Constitution. The podcast has a Constitution, you know.
It does.
Yes, I was reading our Constitution, and it says, TV. Pitch your favorite TV and film. There's TV and film. You know.
Oh yeah.
In our Constitution, so I'm wondering if I could pitch a film next week.
That's in the description for something, right?
It's in the Constitution.
Yeah, because I was afraid that, because I remember early on you had a lot of ideas that were films, and I was afraid. I was like, oh, well, I guess we could throw films in there as well, because then we'd mix it up a little bit. We wouldn't always do pilots.
Yeah.
And I think we were also unsure what the 10th episode would be, if it was going to be like a film or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
You can pitch a film if you want.
We'll pitch a film next week. No, we won't. We might. Who knows? Do you have a TV show to talk about today that you have made up in your brain pan?
That I made up in my brain pan?
Yeah, or stole from David.
It's more of like a brain crock pot, you know? It's a slow roast.
Mm-hmm.
That's on high because I run out of time.
Yeah, throw a little bit
10
of
minutes.
Throw a little bit of garlic, a
little
little bit of
brain
red
microwave,
wine.
I would say.
Oh, nice. I like
Because
that.
it's quick. It's not heated very well, you know?
The middle of it is always cold.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem. And weirdly, like, the left-hand side is cold as well.
Yeah. And then you take a bite of the right-hand side, and it's molten hot.
Yeah, it's way too hot. And the plate is way too hot. You can't pick up the plate.
Oh my god.
'Cause it's not a microwave-safe plate, but you're an idiot, and you just put it in anyway.
Yeah, it's glass.
Yeah.
It's glass, and it's got a bunch of cracks in it.
Yeah, it fucking melted in the microwave.
All right.
Also, like, the podcast had a bit of metal in it as well, so microwave's broken.
Yeah, it exploded. Haven't you ever seen that in a movie? I doubt that works.
I've seen someone put metal in a microwave, and we got it out before it exploded.
Lame.
It was like 10 seconds.
Lame.
So it takes a bit of time, I think.
Yeah, but I'll see that in movies that's like, oh, the main character sets up a trap for the bad guys. He put a bunch of forks in the microwave and turned it on. And when they walk in, it explodes and incinerates all of them. And I'm like,
I guess if you put a lot of metal, it might.
Yeah. I don't know. So give us this partially cold, partially burnt, way too hot a plate pilot.
Well, I know last week everyone was disappointed when they had to listen to punk rock vampires.
Really?
So
I love punk rock vampires.
So I've come up with a very robust, amazing, brilliant idea. No, it's none of those, but it's something.
It's thick.
So thick.
Slap it on the table. Let's see it. Or hear it. This is an audio medium.
So the premise is it's a World War I show.
Okay.
Now, unlike the normal World War, it didn't end.
Ever?
So the American involvement didn't push a decisive victory. Instead, the war just continued.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, over time, the countries couldn't really afford to keep going in the war. They were in so much debt to these gun companies that were, providing the armaments for the war. So eventually, the gun companies sort of take over the war. So now it's just like gun companies from their respective nations fighting each other, but they're not really fighting each other because they're just sort of supplying the weapons, and the infrastructure of the military sort of exists still.
Yeah.
But they really are the ones sort of in charge behind the scenes. And the countries that are there, they just sort of supply the soldiers because they're so in debt to these gun companies that they can't pay with money, so they just continually draft people for them. And that's how they get rid of their debt. But they're in so much debt that, like, it's going to take a lot of men to
It's going to take your entire country's population 3 times over to get out of the debt, so...
Yeah, something insane like that. And
I like it. Wasn't it Dwight D. Eisenhower himself who said, "Beware the military-industrial complex"?
It was the former Supreme Commander of NATO and World War II.
And current dead person and ex-president.
Yes, exactly.
But he's dead, more importantly. So we shouldn't take advice from him.
No, probably not. Well, maybe.
I don't want to take advice from a dead guy.
I get some good advice.
He's dead! Why would I take advice from a dead guy? I don't want to be dead.
Yeah, obviously he fucked up.
Yeah, obviously. I don't want to die. Why the fuck would I take advice from a dead guy?
I guess.
That's stupid.
Anyway, I've got the gun companies here. So we have Shelby, which is American Guns. We have Rigby Co., which is British. De Armas Nationale, which is French. GEWEHR, which is German. And Bendan, which is Chinese.
No Russian gun manufacturers?
No, the Russians capitulated to the Germans. So it's just a Western Front war.
Oh.
Russia is part of Germany.
Good for
But like
Germany.
only like the side of Russia that has people in it.
Only the
European side.
Yeah.
The other side they just sort of left and it's just sort of like nothing now.
Yeah, Siberia, who gives a shit? It's basically it's like a wasteland.
Yeah.
I like
essentially.
this universe. Have you ever heard the quote? If we start the show, I think this quote, God made all men, but Smith & Wesson made all men equal. Is that the quote? Have you heard that before? Like
No, I
God,
haven't heard that, but I like that.
God created man, but Smith & Wesson made him equal.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it doesn't really require. I mean, it does, but not like a ton of skill to shoot a gun.
It requires this.
You just fucking shoot it.
One finger.
Pull the trigger.
Because
Right.
If you are if you have lost 9 of your fingers, you can still fire a gun pretty effectively.
Yeah.
Just have to get someone to hold it for you.
All right, so obviously the show, however, doesn't start with a bunch of context. It starts with a plot and characters.
Ooh.
So we're going to open up in a valley where we're following 2 different squads that are fighting each other in this valley. There's only 2 squads in the valley, the Allied squad and the Central Powers squad. Allied being, British, American, all that stuff, and Central Powers being Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Russians that are reluctantly part of it now.
Okay. And I just have a couple questions about the world.
What's that?
What year is this taking place in? Is it like... Because I think it would be cool if we were like, this war started in 1918 and it finishes in like 1964 or something.
Mm-hmm.
So like our show takes place in the 60s. And
So I've got an American soldier who joined when he was 18, and Americans joined the war, when they were, it was like, I don't remember, it was like probably like 1911. And he's in the war for, since 18, he's now 30, so he's been in the war for 12 years. So it's at least, let's say it's 1930 at least, by the time this show starts. We can push it later if you want, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking, like, it would be a good... Because I'm imagining this show is going to be very anti-war.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm imagining the show isn't painting war in, like, a really good light. Unless, I mean, you can if you want to.
No. The whole point is, like, that the war's, fake.
You should end
It's a war
every
just
episode...
so gun companies can fight.
You should end episode with, like, advertisements from the gun companies. Or, like...
Oh, that'd be funny.
Yeah,
I'd like
Starship Trooper style, like, ads.
Yeah.
Like, serve your country today. And it, like, shows you this, like... You
Buy
get to
a
see...
Shelby.
Yeah. Or, like, yeah, maybe radio ads or something like that. Because I would like to see... We're doing alternative futures here, I've noticed, which I appreciate, because that's something a lot of people don't do. And I think it would be cool to watch, like, a society develop a little bit more while just under the totalitarian, like, foot of big gun,
Yeah.
Because a lot of culture in the, like, 50s and 60s was because of Hitler and World War II, obviously. So it would be cool to see, like, oh, it's not even the Germans are the bad guys anymore. It's like the war. I don't know if you've read 1984. I think you have.
Yeah, the war is just the war.
Yeah, the war between Pacifica and Oceania, or whatever it's called. And it's like,
It's about fighting a war, yeah.
Yeah.
That was sort of my idea with, like, the endless war.
Mm-hmm. And maybe technology has developed in such a way that, like, they're less it's like, maybe they're ruining the planet faster. Like, pollution got kicked into high gear with World War II and it never slowed down. So maybe, like, we see a lot of, like, really torrential, like, weather events occur. Like,
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, throughout the story, that, like, maybe Texas freezes over in 1942 rather than, 2021, because pollution has just, like, been ramped up so much by all the gun manufacturers, and that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, that's good. Because I'm thinking, like, also is, like, technology didn't develop for, like, consumers as well. It just kept... It's only weapons that are being built, only new weapons.
Yeah.
And sort of what inspired this idea was that there was a lot of weapons at the end of World War I that never came into production because the war ended. But they were all, like, just crazy stuff, like crazy tanks and weird mechanical things and gases and stuff like that. And I'm thinking we throw all that stuff and all those weird World War I weapons that never came to be.
Because the Geneva Convention was written, Yeah,
well, that didn't really matter.
Well,
Geneva Convention matters when there's peace.
Yeah, well, I know, but the Geneva Convention was written after World War II, right? And it banned the use of chemical warfare. Mm-hmm. So chemical warfare would be, like, way more blatant and, like, I think, I don't know. There's a lot of cool ideas that come to mind. Sorry, you go, and then I'll talk when you're done explaining.
The rest of the show. Well, I'm about to get into the characters and, like, the plot, so I don't know if you want to finish.
I was just thinking we could have an episode in, like, Stalingrad, and maybe because Stalingrad was under siege for months.
But this is World War One, so
yeah. But it's still
also wasn't called Stalingrad. It was probably
Leningrad.
Well, Leningrad was St. Petersburg. Mm-hmm. I don't know what Stalingrad was before. It was like Volksgrad or something like that, or is that what it is now? I don't remember. Something like that.
I'm just thinking of, like, a huge Russian city that's been walled in, and there are people, and they're, like, enemies of the state are poisoning the water supply. So, like, maybe this universe has a lot more, like, biological warfare. Like, biological warfare has become much more... It's like the big ticket item, Like, maybe... These gun companies are thinking to themselves, I mean, selling bullets and ammunition and guns is great, but where the real money is in selling doomsday devices and, like, diseases and germs and stuff like that. So maybe a subplot of the series could be our main character finds out that, like, one of the major gun companies is developing, like, this super dangerous virus that could destroy the entire world if it gets out.
Yeah, I think I have a person that could fit that, actually. Because I have a character who's from Russia and who's been, like, forced into the war because Germany took over.
Yeah.
And so maybe she could explain, like, what's going on back home, and they can all sort of realize it.
Maybe she was a plucky young Russian journalist who...
No, we can't do any more journalists. Just do any journalism stories. We need to wait, like, a couple weeks for that.
Who got in too deep and found out that the Russian government is helping fund German experiments for the first nuke or whatever. Or
maybe we make it more somber, where it's like her brother was tested on, and they had to push her to the war front because they didn't want her to tell anyone.
Mm-hmm. But they couldn't just kill her because she was famous.
Or they saw it as a better way of killing her. Just by sending her to the war. Yeah, also, women fight in the war now because,
you gotta.
We progressed in society in the sense that there's not a lot of men left. So
Yeah.
you gotta have people fight, and these countries need to continue supplying people. So they send women as well now.
I mean, I think that happens a lot during, like, at least during the world wars we've had so far.
Well, they wouldn't send women to fight. They'd make them work in factories and such. But
Yeah, I know, but there was always, war is a great motivator for social progress because you need everybody on board with the same
see, it's not
thing.
like social progress, really. It's like, well, most of the men are dead, so I think we gotta include women.
Yeah.
So that we can meet the manpower requirements of the gun companies.
Maybe this becomes a plot point, like the president has like 8 wives, because it's like maybe the U.S. government is encouraging like being married to multiple people, because it's like, well, about half of our population died in that war,
Yeah,
so we
they just
need
want
new
to have
people.
kids.
Yeah.
But they could make it like fluid marriages, maybe. We're getting way too far into this. Anyway, so the characters in our valley that are fighting each other. So we have the Allied side, which is Tommy, Frank, Emanuela, and Louis. So Tommy is a young English captain who recently joined the war. He's probably like in his mid-20s. He's smart, optimistic, and he's disillusioned with command. So not a big fan of the orders he receives, and he's a little skeptical.
Tommy.
Then we have Frank. Yeah, Tommy.
Okay, Tommy.
Then we have Frank, who's an older American, very experienced.
Like
He's a
how
sad,
old?
kind of depressed guy. We're getting there.
Oh.
And all he knows is the war because he joined when he was 18. Young lad, maybe 16 actually. So he joined early.
Yeah.
And now he's 30. So he's been in the war for the longest out of anyone else there.
Maybe that could be a thing, like a new recruit program. It's like the government's like, we've changed the law, and now you can sign up to the military when you're 14.
Well, I was thinking he joins the war when it's like still World War One, like the real World War One.
Yeah.
So it's not as like the gun companies weren't in charge when he joined the war. So probably like just before that, he joined because he still thought it mattered and was still hopeful.
Yeah.
And he saw like the gun companies take over and everything. And now he's just like a sad, depressed person who has like no hope.
Maybe he should be a bit older than 30. I think,
Okay,
if
maybe like
if he's a
fucking
grizzled
45.
vet- yeah. Like, have you seen
Then he's
Fury?
a really long time in there, yeah.
Have you seen Fury with Brad Pitt?
You saying he's like Brad Pitt?
I mean, Fury is a tank movie in World War II, where Brad Pitt and Shia LaBeouf and a bunch of other people are in a tank together, and Brad Pitt pays like daddy war bucks or something. I don't remember, but he's like this old grizzled veteran of the war, and he's like, there's nothing I can do besides this, I'm not going home because what am I? I'm a killing machine, and I'm out here doing what I do, killing Nazis. So I think he should be like that, like kind of, he's resigned himself. Like, I allowed the state to transform me into a weapon.
But he's really sad about it. Like, he's not, he's not positive about his new
Well, Brad Pitt's
lifestyle.
not positive about it in the movie.
Okay, well, I haven't seen Fury, so I don't know.
He's just like, well, there's like, if I go back to society, I can't function in normal human society anymore. I'm an animal. I'm a weapon. And the only thing I can do, this is for Frank, not for Brad Pitt. The only thing I can do to possibly redeem me in this world is by making sure that nobody else has to do what I did. So maybe he's like, he's got a really strong bond with kids. Not in like a creepy way, but just
I'm thinking
like,
him and Tommy are pretty close.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't want Tommy to become like what he is now.
Mm-hmm. Cool, Frank.
All right. Then we have Emanuela and Louis, who are both French, brother-sister. Louis was drafted into the war. He's a small, skinny kid.
Mm-hmm.
He's good with technology, but he's not a good shot, not a good fighter. And that's why Emanuela joined the war. Probably just going to call her M for short, because that's a long name.
Mm-hmm.
She's a sniper. She's really smart. Keeps to herself. very good fighter, and she just joined to protect her brother. So
yeah, maybe it was there. Like their whole family, because this is still taking place like in the early 20th century. So like maybe her father had been raising the what's his name? The boy Louis to be like this great shot, but he always wanted to become a priest or something. Like he just loves God and he loves wine and women, but he's trying to become a priest. And his father's like, no son of mine's going to be no namby-pamby priest who can't get married, so you're killing your father's name and you gotta wear a dumb white collar. No. And he sends him off to the war. And it's like, maybe this will make you a man. And maybe his mom, Louis' mom, is pregnant. So their dad is just like, okay, fresh slate of kids. Like
get rid of the
girl, maybe their father is like, you'll be married to Brakovsky. He is friend of family.
Why is the French dad now Russian?
Maybe the dad's Russian and the mom's French.
You're really going a lot into this backstory that for me was just their parents are dead, and that's the only family she's got that I wrote.
Oh.
But maybe yours is good too. It's a very complicated story. Anyway, so that's the Allied side. Only 4 people on the Allied side. Okay. Only 3 on the Central Power side. It's a small valley.
Yeah.
Soldiers are limited in this war, so like squads are pretty poorly manned. It's like they're constantly promised more men, but like they never receive them because
just where are they gonna get them?
All right, so then we have the Central Powers. We have the 26-year-old German captain named Frederick. He's a very negative person. He's a recluse, but he's very intelligent. Mm-hmm. He's not really into the war at all. But if he was, he could probably wipe out the Allied side in like a couple days.
The whole Allied side?
No, like the 4 that are against them. Because he's like really smart, but he like just doesn't really care.
Maybe he's
about the war. He just sort of like hangs out at base, and they like set up defenses if necessary. They try not to kill the Allied side.
Mm-hmm. Because if they kill the Allied side, then the Allied side's going to try and kill them.
Yeah, and they're going to get like reinforcements and stuff as well. So he sort of realized that in this life, if he just keeps it the status quo there, things will stay the same, and he just wants to keep it that way because he thinks that it'll only get worse if he does anything.
Maybe he's got like a hobby. I'm thinking of this guy. Like maybe because I think he and Louis.
He's a painter.
Oh, I was gonna say that they were both poets, but
Louis.
Louis and Frederick were both poets, but Frederick's poetry and prose are all really flowery and up their own ass and like not very good. And Louis, Frederick's, and he's like 25, and he's really, really smart, but he's just not a good poet. It's all like boring, sappy bullshit. And Louis, who's like 19 or 18 or whatever, or maybe even 16, is like is an amazing wartime poet. And
maybe we can make Louis a good poet, but I don't know if I want to make Frederick like a shitty poet.
He thinks he's so intelligent that he's like, whatever. Maybe he's a gardener.
Well, his main thing is that he's he's just trying to keep things the way they are because he's afraid that changing anything will make it worse. So I don't really think making him like a shitty poet really helps his character. He's kind of like a sad, dramatic, tragic character.
Yeah, and what's more sad and dramatic than being bad at something?
Well, that's funny. That's not sad.
It's funny. It's also sad to be bad. What if he's a gardener?
I don't want Frederick to be funny. I just want him to be sad.
Okay, how about he's a gardener?
Gardener. Okay, he can be a gardener. You really care about his plants.
Well,
he's not a shitty gardener. Don't say he's a shitty gardener. No, he's a good...
I'm just saying the penny drop of the season could be like, everything's fine, they're not fighting, they're actually making friends with the Allies, maybe. Because they're all in like a valley together, and maybe there's a little bit of stalemate, but then American forces come in. Or, what was the gun? Shelby forces come in. And they bomb the shit out of the Axis, not the Axis, the other side's camp, and everyone survives and it's fine, but Frederick's garden is destroyed, and that's
that's the straw that breaks the
and that's what pushes him over. That's what pushes him over the edge, and it's like, all right, I'm gonna use the mustard gas or whatever.
Well, okay, well maybe not that. I'll get back to that after we finish the characters. Then we have Lucas, who's an 18-year-old Austrian who just joined, and is completely enthralled with propaganda, so he really believes in the war. He really does not fit into the Central Power side, because we have Frederick, who doesn't want to fight. We have Natasha, who I haven't explained yet, but she's Russian, hates the war, hates the Central Powers, forced into fighting, and refuses to fight. And then we have Lucas, who wants to fight and is completely enthralled by the propaganda, yet his teammates are like, nah. And so they sort of like, he's kind of easily manipulated. So they just sort of manipulate him into thinking that he is fighting when he's not.
Yeah.
They'll be like, all right, lay down some covering fire over at that rock. And he's like, I got 3 of them. He's like, yeah, you did get 3 of them. It was like, maybe they set up like targets over there so it looks like there's people.
Yeah, or maybe it's just like they've got a recording, like recorded of like, I've been shot. I'm dead. And they play that every time he fires his gun. And they're like, good job, Lucas.
Yep.
Is Natasha a Black Widow type?
Because she's Russian, her name's Natasha.
Yeah, and she's a soldier. And she hates the Russian government.
No, she doesn't hate the Russian government because there is no Russian government. She hates the German government because they took over and destroyed Russia.
Yeah, maybe she wants to move to Siberia with her grandmother.
Maybe. Remember, I thought we were doing the, her brother got sick because of chemical weapon exposure, and she got sent to the war so that she wouldn't tell anyone.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. We're doing that.
All right, so we got our characters, obviously. And so we're going to start off, the first season of this show is mainly going to be about, it's kind of sitcom-y. Maybe not the first season, maybe the first like few episodes. But it's just sort of like, you know, them in the valley sort of just messing with each other. Yeah. I imagine a lot like Red versus Blue in a way.
But nobody's dying or like getting shot. It's just like water
nobody
balloons.
Gets shot or dies in Red versus Blue either.
I haven't seen it. They get shot at.
Yeah, but they don't kill each other. It's the same idea. It's like they're fighting, but like not really fighting.
There's witty banter while they're fighting, I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But unlike Red versus Blue, this has like a very, I don't know, more grounded plot.
But then they accidentally
so over
blow
time,
up a child.
They realize, I guess Tommy will realize that like the gun companies supply and order both teams. And they'll sort of come to this realization. And he'll like bring it to the Central Power side, like Frederick, and he'll be like, hey, like this is the way it is. And Frederick's be like, I realized that like 10 years ago. But there's no hope, so we just gotta stay like it is.
Yeah.
And then maybe we can have the bombing that destroys his garden. And that like finally breaks him, because he realizes he can't have the peace he wants.
Yeah, and so like the two sides team up.
Yep. They team up and they're gonna take on the gun companies. And sort of like the next sort of era of the story is them going around to the different trenches and meeting like different people that are fighting. And like some people are like, you know, really into the fighting. Sometimes like the Allied side won the fight and like there's no one left to fight. And maybe it's like something sad where like with no one to fight, they all just killed themselves or something like that. Like really sad.
Really sad. Okay. I was thinking, I think it could be a bit more like, oh, okay, well, we're leaving and we want to go, you know, Natasha has this information, so we're going to go rally some rebellion forces behind us. Like,
well, yeah, we're gonna get there.
Yeah, but I'm imagining they could at least at some point go to Siberia, and I'm seeing Siberia as like this no man's land for everyone. It gets along, nobody kills anyone because they're all running away from the war. So it's like war vets, people who like the government thinks they died. Maybe somebody's, you know, brother or friend could be living there.
Yeah.
And they escaped. and it's just kind of like this, like maybe it's a part of the simple life that Frederick is always looking for. Like they're just farming and living and, you know, that sort of thing. And then they get gassed by somebody or bombed by one of the gun companies because Siberia is like, you can do it, you can kill whoever you want in there. It's not owned by anyone.
Yeah.
And then that's what pushes them to start
go back. Like try to. I like that because that leads in well into what like I have next, which is like them. They're gonna eventually find and storm the HQ, probably with like a couple of the different squads that they've met along the way. So it's like this big joint allied Central Powers effort to like take back the headquarters, and they're fighting like the people that are there, like the security military people, and they like get through, have like a confrontation with Mr. Shelby, like, you know, the leader of Shelby guns or whatever. And it's kind of like, you know, they're in like a boardroom or something, and it's very obvious that all the gun companies meet there. And Shelby's like the chairman of the board. And he sort of explains his motives. It's like, you know, endless war, you know, endless profit, something like that. And like this idea, like that we just need to keep it going so we can keep making more money. Like, why can't you all just keep fighting? Just like the very, you know, disillusioned view with the reality. Yeah. And eventually
like, he's doing it like a NFL. Like he's doing it like football, like fantasy football. Maybe he's taking bets
on like who's gonna win each thing. Yeah.
Each battle. Maybe he's like, there is a intense like gambling ring going on with like all the richest, most powerful like government leaders and company heads around the world being like, well, I think blank is going to win the battle of the second bulge, and I think blank is going to win the battle of second bulge. All right, good work. But they will like fuck each other over. So it's like, all right, Shelby is supplying one half the battle of the second bulge, and Blitzcow is supplying the other. I'm just making one up. So Blitzcow will send ammunition to the front that they're sending, but I want Shelby to win, so make sure Blitzcow sends only blanks.
Yeah.
So, like, they, you know, get all of the guns, and, like, get loaded up with, like, shells and bullets and rockets and stuff, and none of them work. And, like, just hundreds of people are murdered. Just, like, instantly, because they have all these guns that don't work. And it's just like, yes, I made $70 off that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe it's like a mix of gambling and also, like, maybe a bit of scientific experimentation. Like, they're testing out different things, like gases and such, on like a live environment. And that's one of his arguments, like, you know, we have unparalleled scientific research
opportunities
during this time because we're able to just like freely test on humans this like crazy amount of stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe he goes on some rant about like how humans need war and like we need it to keep going, and this endless war is the only way to like keep society like stable.
Yeah.
Anyway, it ends with them taking him down, and then they like, the end of the show is like them announcing, because in the HQ they have like a way to communicate with all the soldiers, because you know they send supplies and orders and stuff. So they just communicate to everyone like the war's over, and people start to go home. You know.
Yeah.
It's getting happier. The countries are absolved of their debt because the gun companies don't exist, or the countries are absolved of their debt because the gun companies don't exist anymore. And they don't have to continually draft men anymore. And like society slowly starts to rebuild itself.
I think we could have like some very touching shots at the end when the war is over of like people, we do a flashback to when they leave and then them coming back. And it's like this bright-eyed, bushy-tailed young man. See you later, Mom, I love you. And then he comes back, he's got this big beard and he's missing an arm. And he's like
his
scraggly.
mom's like really old now.
Yeah.
Maybe his dad's not there.
Yeah, his dad died. His dad got murdered by the dog, who also died.
We have Frank like going back to like an old destroyed farmhouse with nothing there. and he's like just walks up to the grave of his family because he's like 45 now and his parents are dead. Even though your parents aren't really dead when you're 45, but we'll just do that because
it's a never-ending war. So let's just say they died.
Yeah,
because if never-ending war happened, they would definitely have started bombing the continental United States.
Well, the war is kind of just in that part, though. It's just in Europe.
It's just torn Europe apart and Africa.
Because it's all, like, the fighting is very, the gun companies keep it restricted to very specific areas. Mm-hmm. So that they can operate and, like, do whatever they need in the rest of the world.
Yeah. But the Middle East is full of peace because all the gun companies want oil.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess there was not really a ton of fighting besides Turkey in the Middle East, or the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah.
We'll just say the Ottoman Empire didn't join the war. So, like, the Ottoman Empire still exists, and it's just, like, this really peaceful country that's just hanging out with all, like, Turkey, the Middle East is just like a utopia.
Oh, that'd be great. I think Turkey would be, like, that's where it stops. That's where the fighting stops. The companies don't let the fighting get any closer to their oil fields or their poppy plants because they all do heroin. And I'm just thinking, what should China? We are talking a long time.
China, I have as a gun company, so I'm thinking. I guess during World War One they have like some fighting, but I don't know.
Maybe
we'll just have China be like, we won't talk about it.
Maybe China takes over Korea because they don't have the U.S. to help during any sort of Korean war. So maybe it like speeds that up. Because I'm thinking like Africa.
I guess Japan still exists. So maybe because Japan was becoming an imperialist power in World War One, and they fought Russia. So maybe Japan. Maybe there's an Asian empire now. Japan controls all of China and all of Korea, because that's probably what they would have done if it weren't for outside intervention.
Yeah.
So we'll say that it's just like an Asian empire now on that side, and they just, they're not a utopia. They're like an imperialistic kind of totalitarian government that just supports the gun companies.
But there's still emperors and there's still samurai and shit because yeah, that's cool. I like it. All right. Well, I think that's do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No. Maybe Australia has no people left because they all fought and died in the war.
Yeah, maybe Australia is like this is rumored to be like this chemically harmful wasteland, but it's actually like a paradise. Like,
or
maybe
it's rumored to be a paradise, and actually no one lives there because they all got sent to the war.
Oh, yeah.
And then they just did tests on it afterwards.
Maybe that's where all of the super rich people live.
Australia?
Like, yeah.
No, that could work. So, like, they got rid of all the people because they sent them to war, and now all the super rich people live in Australia.
Yeah, like, Australia it's said, they say, like, oh, Australia is destroyed by chemical warfare. Nothing can grow there. And it's a hellhole. Nobody should go. Definitely don't investigate. And then they just have like super wealthy cities.
Yeah. This is where all the rich people are.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Jake. I think that was a good idea for a television show. Do you have a title? Sorry about that. Do you have a title in mind?
Probably something like The Never-Ending War or something like that. I'll come up with it in post.
World War Forever. World War Infinity.
Beyond reason.
War ad infinitum.
No. I don't want to do fucking Latin.
Why?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for listening. And
maybe just call it the Great War.
You could just call it the Great War. The war to end all wars. I think I already did that, though. The war to end all wars. I like that. Oh, by the way, I meant to ask this earlier. Can we have... I remember one of them was named George. I forget the other one.
No one was named George in this.
No, in the first World War I show we did.
Okay, yeah.
The two guys who live in the trenches and the walls.
Yeah.
Can we just have them show up places? Because I
in
think
this show?
Yes.
Yeah,
it's a
they
World
could be
War
like
I
background
show.
character. I'm also thinking Ivan Illich makes an appearance as well.
Oh yeah, he makes an appearance. He teabags everybody. He's the best. He kills Rasputin.
Yep.
It's an alternative future. Well, thank you everyone for listening to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I've been your host. As always, with me has been my co-host, Jacob Cloth. I meant to say I've been your host, Charles Long, but I skipped my own name. And tell us what you would name this show. Give us an idea of a name. Don't make it dirty, though. That would be very naughty of you. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone about the podcast. You can find us at Twitter at VRP Podcast, and you can find me at Twitter at Charles_Lungs. And you can't find Jacob anywhere because he is a ghost. Thank you for listening. Thank you for editing, Jacob. Goodbye.